welcome to episode 2. Now Alan, the style of these opening credits is very similar to the 1980 final Tom Baker credits on Doctor Who, and continued on for Peter Davison and Colin Baker. Certainly the same effect with the stars and faces coming towards the camera. What's the connection here? Is this evolution in technology in those few years between one face and many?
Robin Lobb, who was the video effects supervisor on Box of Lights, also worked on Doctor Who and probably Blake Seven and a number of other similar productions. So even if they didn't copy techniques explicitly, they would use the same approach. And they knew what worked. And I'm sure Rennie had an idea in his mind, and they used whatever tricks would fit.
For the following this now has, and all the press pieces we've seen across the years, there aren't too many mentions of Alan Seymour. Can you shed any light on him?
I didn't really have much to do with him, I'm afraid.
No, and I'd say neither did I. We got the package, and basically I think we followed the script pretty well.
Normally, if the author or adapter come visit site, they always end up chatting to the sound people, because they're the only people who care much more about the dialogue. Almost everyone on site is concerned with the visual image, art department, makeup, cameras, the whole lot, costume. So we're very much in a minority, and the authors and the people who do the adapting are sort of natural allies.
Kay swinging away there, certainly no stranger to a sword, having chopped off a knight's head in the Midnight Folk. So this was the shortest night of the year.
21st of June.
Rennie had to concentrate on not seeing the sky latterly.
Yeah.
Otherwise that would have given the game away, but we're just crushing the blacks all the time.
And of course, when we were in Scotland, we were in January, where the days were very short, and we were rushing around like mad trying to shoot what we could in the very limited daylight. And here in the Wolf Farm,
it's the opposite.
Trying to use the limited darkness.
With all these lights here, it actually made the local paper with reports from worried people that it may have been a UFO.
People walked up from the village.
Television lights are a particularly intense, ultra bright white. It's not just the brightness, it's the colour temperature that is unusual. And obviously it's had another otherworldly quality as far as the locals are concerned. Well, that's your Berkshire people for you.
Did you get to watch it when it first aired?
Actually, I didn't watch the first episode because I was dubbing the last episode. On that very same afternoon, I just about finished the fight scene. Probably the cathedral at Hereford, and we finished about 9 o'clock. But we probably finished the actual work by about 7:30, and then you do a run through to check that everything is flawless, which of course it would be if I worked on it.
When the cameras eventually stop rolling after filming wraps, is it then over to the likes of you, Alan?
We don't get involved sound-wise for several months afterwards, so Rennie never stops.
Yeah, he went through with the location, he then went through the studio, and then he went through the edit and the dubbing, and he's involved right the way through.
A number of things that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So while this was going through the editing stage, I was doing other productions.
What did you move on to after this, Tony?
There were other studio shows I did, but I think the next thing I did, and that was with Rennie, was December Rose, which I've recently reviewed, and it stands the test of time very well.
It really does. I watched it for the first time recently, and I enjoyed it immensely. And you get to see Bill Wallace, who played Rat.
Much of 1983, 84 was me doing Tripods Series 1, then this, then Tripod Series 2. So it was quite a busy year for children's drama.
So with the fake snow at the enclosure, how was all this distributed?
Oh, we had a couple of fire engines there laying it, visual effects company, who were hired in by Tony Harding, of course, because he was the visual effects guy.
I must admit, I never liked the fake snow.
No,
It
no.
always kicked up in sort
Yeah.
of fluffy lumps.
Yeah, but
It always felt to me like an Ibiza foam party, except for it hadn't been invented.
you're right. I got into a lot of trouble at Tewkesbury Abbey because I think the dean of is it Dean? Well, I don't know. Abbey. Anyway, the guy, head honcho, rang up and said, "You've burnt the grass." I said, "No, I think you'll find, because this was during the following summer, I think you'll find that due to the unbelievably hot summer, I think you'll find if you just poke down in the areas that you think the grass is burned, you'll find graves underneath the grass. And I think you'll find that next year, any burn marks will have gone." And they had.
This is a very well built studio pantry.
On location, you wouldn't have a shelf with where you
see through, yeah. Mm.
Attention to detail is excellent. Another group of unsung heroes are the set builders. You can imagine something like this taking a fair amount of time to build, and a scene lasting just a minute or two, and then it's surplus to requirements. It no doubt turned out to be a very valuable asset, the fact that quite a few of you knew each other. Knowing you're working with people who are guaranteed to deliver the goods really makes things that bit less stressful. Here we are, stunning Scotland. Now, you didn't go to Scotland, Tony.
I was finalising all the locations around Bewdley and East Nor and Malvern when they were doing this.
So that would have been Rennie who scouted out the locations there.
Mm-hmm.
From a sound point of view, this was absolutely amazing because the snow, as you can see, it's ridiculously deep. It stopped people driving about, and there was no passing traffic.
Of course.
It was spookily quiet everywhere around there. The only noise was very distant snowplows, and normally we'd send somebody out to, if it was attractive, we'd send somebody out to, would you mind shutting up? But if it's a snowplow, there's no way you can say, would you mind shutting up? But with the kids' dialogue and things, we were hearing it in a way that you, from a distance, that would normally be impossible.
Yeah.
And there's no way you could fake these sort of scenes. The frost in
Look
the
at
trees.
That. The way they're running through the virgin snow.
And they had to do this ridiculous ridiculous run because it was just so deep for conventional running. Although they're actually running through a groove.
They've been pre-cut, yeah. There's the flying car.
Now that posed problems. I had to find a way of getting the sound of the car engine starting and then cross-fading to the sound of an aeroplane that sounded plausibly like it. And with a bit of research for engines and things like that, plus whatever I could find in the BBC sound effects library, an SE5A was the aircraft that could do it. And the judicious cross-fading from the car start to the engine running got us there.
Jimmy Grant, lovely man.
Terrific look. Whatever you see on the screen, he's 10 times more like that in real life. He's
what
10
a lovely
times
man.
funnier, 10 times more warm. Just such a lovely chap to work with.
An aeroplane.
Studio set here. A clue is always just a dull brightness outside any window. Normally you would see a view outside and some activity going on.
Of course, all he wants to do is talk about magic tricks.
Yeah.
Oh, and a posset. Because he mentions the posset.
I was having a chat with Jimmy once and sort of chuckling about the fact that he uses H's where they shouldn't be there. I was saying my father-in-law used to have the same thing, and he would refer to arrow on the ill, And in our family, we used to call it unintentional aspirants.
I like that.
And Jimmy said, I think you'll find they're unintentional aspirants.
Lovely man.
Also an excellent performance on many occasions as Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse.
Actors like to think about the voices and the walk and all that sort of thing for their character. And he drew upon his... he had some relatives in Gloucestershire. And he drew upon elements from the way they spoke for this character.
Perfect. An officer of the law.
In the early pre-production stages, was there a table gathering at the BBC going over logistics and scripts?
I think we did have one day at the East Tower rehearsal block where everybody came in and we just read the script round, and we had the actors, the head of the various crafts, and I think we did that for a day.
Neither Devin or Crispin went too much further into the business in front of the camera. Devin focused on behind the scenes and Crispin went down a completely different career route. Happened a lot in the 70s and 80s with child actors. It's a tough and tiring transition from child actor into the adult acting world. Did you have good vibes that this could be something special?
I think everybody did, and everybody did their best work. There we are with the magic tricks, as I said.
I love that he gradually starts to get on Kay's nerves.
Yeah.
Devin's facial expressions are excellent. Was all location work filmed first and then studio work after?
It's better to do location first because if it's raining,
you can match
you're
it.
going to walk towards the door saturated, and if you've already shot a nice dry studio, it's going to look stupid if people
come in dry,
approach the door saturated and walk through dry. So at least if you do the outside first, you can match the inside accordingly. But I'm not sure if, because of the strike, I'm not sure if the studio was done before the June pickups or afterwards.
I think it was done after.
Oh, that's good. If that
I think it was done after.
Because it's always dodgy if you do them.
And it was a prop strike, was it?
Yeah.
I can't remember much about it. I didn't have much sympathy with it, but...
Did it bring everything to a standstill?
It eventually did bring everything to a standstill, but a lot of the scenes we were doing were not prop heavy. And there wasn't a lot of scenery on location. And a lot of it had already been set. So we actually managed to work on for quite a while before we ground to a halt.
The problem was that Box of Delights was pretty well running to schedule, and the union reps were able to find us. Whereas when we did Tripods, there was maybe a different strike, but in those days there were strikes. And at that time we were hopelessly different to the planned schedule. And when the union people came out to Wales
they
to try and find us,
they
couldn't find us. And the production team actually made sure that there's some fake shooting scripts were left where the union people could find them. And of course, they were all on wild goose chases.
It was a case of it was only the scene crew, and we only had 2 scene crew with us because there wasn't that much work. But eventually we ran out of scenes that didn't need scenery to do, and then we had to stop.
But on top of that, if one union calls a strike, other unions basically come out in sympathy. And although
support.
I wasn't a union member, I used to be, but I pulled out largely because of some of the silly strikes that we were involved with. But once you've got a critical mass of people withdrawing your labour, you can't work
on there.
Nobody wanted to abandon it, obviously.
No.
Everyone loved doing this work.
And the logistics were very difficult.
Back then, how did Equity work? Are crew members in there along with the actors?
No, we weren't in Equity. I was in ACTT at the time, which wasn't a recognised union at the BBC. So the union side didn't affect me at all, really.
And we had a different union altogether for the technicians. ACTT might have been a logical one to join, but they carved it up. They had their own ways of doing it.
On the grounds of Raymar House here, with stunning views. The wonderful Helen Fraser, great career and found fame all over again in the late 1990s, watched by millions, playing the role of Body Bag in ITV's Bad Girls.
Clearly Scotland with real snow. When she walked out of the door, that looked to me like fake snow in at the house.
Yes, absolutely correct. This is a door at Seekins. When I showed the owners the photo, although you don't see the entirety of it in the episode, she did recognise the horseshoe that was hanging above. Fond memories of Helen?
Fabulous. It couldn't have been better at this.
She was perfect.
And again, a lovely person to work with.
When you were in Scotland especially, were the children doing half-day filming and half schooling?
Part of the deal with working with children is you have to have
tutors and chaperones.
You have a tutor and a chaperone. Chaperone can be a family member, but wasn't, I don't think. But you also need a tutor, and you have to do a certain amount of schooling. And the thing is, the law governing the use of children goes back to the days of children down the mine and children up the chimney. And if you get caught breaking the law, it's an offence possibly punishable by imprisonment.
It's very difficult for the tutors and chaperones because they've got very clear limits. They've got to safeguard the children, basically. But equally, the production team want to get the thing finished. So there's a lot of pressure to, okay, can we just another 10 minutes?
One more.
And there comes a point where they really have to put their foot down and say, no, you really can't do that.
Alan, you managed to capture a stunning picture when you were up here.
Yes, I always carried an Olympus XA camera with me, which was a 35mm camera where you could basically deceive it about the type of film we used. And I told it the film was a completely different speed rating to what it really was, and was able to get the most wonderful picture of the snow.
It's literally stuck to the sides of the trees. What a downfall and breeze that must have been.
Yeah. The day before,
and
there wasn't much snow at all. That all happened overnight. We went to bed thinking there was a bit of a snow flurry, we might be okay. When you opened the curtains in the morning, it was, oh my word.
I would always argue for the generator to be parked as far as possible from where we were shooting because although they were referred to as silent generators, they still produced a significant rumble, which I would prefer to minimise for obvious reasons. Apart from the technical vehicles, there are other specialised vehicles. Makeup department need well-lit spaces to do their job, and wardrobe department need facilities for the cast to change into and out of their costumes, and also for the costumes to be stored and cared for. Sometimes a combined makeup and costume vehicle could be used with dedicated facilities at either end of the vehicle. Other times they would each have their own specialised vehicle. The art department sometimes needed a huge lorry to transport bulky scenery, and other times they could get away with a smaller van just to carry tiny items needed to dress and maintain the set. It's not practical for actors and costume to pop along to a nearby cafe for lunch, and it would take far too long anyway. So a mobile kitchen is used, along with a support vehicle to ferry ingredients from the nearest catering supplier. A dining bus allows the cast and crew to be sheltered from the weather during meals. Then there would be other miscellaneous vans and vehicles needed on certain days for special effects or animals or any number of things, really. This all adds up to quite a large circus which needs to be accommodated. If space is tight, a unit base might be established a little distance from the location. The technical trucks and art department always need to be close to the filming location, while the unit base is the place for all the support vehicles for makeup, catering and everything else which isn't absolutely essential to be immediately adjacent to the action.
I think one of the secrets of its success is it worked for children and it worked in a different way for adults, because a lot of parents were drawn to the series in a way that wasn't the case for a lot of children's programs.
Absolutely right.
Just fantastic. Has a Watership Down animation feel to it.
Except they blew the budget on the animations. It's too dear.
I like that.
Send your complaints to Alan Taylor, care of Blackpool Winter Gardens. Is this a long process? I mean, we only see a few seconds, but in reality, back in the studio,
It's a long...
Animation takes forever to do.
So many frames.
But the lovely thing about animation is it's whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
So if you want to combine live action with animation, you can start with the motion of the people running or whatever and start doing it frame by frame. They used to, on film, they used to call it rotoscope, where they would do it frame by frame and basically draw around the outline. And there are similar techniques you can use on video. But you can get that seamless transmission from real life to, fantasy world. And back again.
So this is basically Rennie's vision. He's passing his vision on to the animator, saying, this is what I'd like to see, seeing the fish, then transforming into bird, etc.
Now, he would have given chapter and verse, but I think this was being worked on while we were filming. And he came back to see almost the finished product, because I think he was very happy with it.
He would certainly have to do the beginning and end transitions after we filmed it.
Yeah.
But the bulk of all this sequence could have been done in isolation.
Well, I think it was, yeah.
The one constant throughout this phenomenal era of children's series is Paul Stone. As well as this, he produced Moonfleet, December Rose and the Children of Green Know, of which you were on board with, Tony, Moondial and the Four Chronicles of Narnia. How was Paul to work with?
He was fine. Just now and again he'd want to know how much we'd spent.
And it was the biggest ever budget for a children's TV show.
It was £1 million. Part of that agreement was due to the fact that the controller, BBC Two, was a phenomenal fan.
Mr. Grade?
Mr. Grade, indeed. He'd heard it as a radio drama.
Runners will ferry the cast and crew between the unit base and location as required. That all adds up to quite a logistics challenge, but despite having an unprecedented budget by the standards of children's television at that time, Box of Delights was at the cheaper end of the spectrum for BBC drama productions in those days. Other dramas I had worked on around that time were significantly bigger in scale.
Now, the trick for all this, the thing that made it viable, was they used a thing called a periscope, which allows a camera to get a lens right down to ground level looking up. Obviously, the bulk of a camera would normally make that impossible.
Yeah.
So with the sort of a macro lens right at ground level, you can get that the miniature perspective. So that giant railway truck was just a normal sized toy one.
Oh yes,
looked up with the macro lens.
And here's Mouse, the ice skating mouse.
Simon Barry can be seen without Mousie's head on in the famous Blue Peter interview with Devin and Patrick.
This is a studio thing. I
Yeah,
wasn't involved.
it is in studio.
But it's usually a PTFE sort of tile system for skating on.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. And dry ice to make it look like it's cold.
Yeah. He's a lovely guy as well. I didn't recognise him, of course. I'd never seen him out of costume.
Yeah. Well, I never worked with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely brilliant.
Lovely guy.
These days, a location drama shoot tends to be a massively bigger operation with far more vehicles involved, most noticeably enormous Winnebogos for the principal actors. The Boxer Delights actors had to manage without such luxuries.
Very shortly we're going to see the Pirate Rats, and one of them is played by a pre-EastEnders Nick Berry, who went on to have huge fame in the excellent series Heartbeat. Is this periscope work again, Alan?
I would have thought that was a normal camera on the
Yeah,
set.
I think it is a normal camera.
I mean, here there's multiple images combined. So
Yeah. And there they're being flown in front of green screen.
On wires, one would assume.
Yeah.
that was Kirby Wire.
Yeah,
But other times he's lying on a sort of a hospital trolley.
Yeah, a blue one.
Around.
Yeah. Or a green one. Yeah. This is Abner with his windproof flamer matches, where he will burn his finger and talk about what he's going to do to that boy. And of course, the set that Abner's in is raised 4 feet off the ground, so you can get the perspective of the little people looking through the hole, the mouse hole.
You see the soot on his finger.
Yeah, I mean, he's burning his finger for real.
No fakery there.
No, he's really burning his finger.
And I want one of those dressing gowns.
It's a lovely dressing gown, a padded one. Yeah.
Nick Berry.
Yeah, Nick Berry.
Whatever happened to him?
Ah,
He'd have been nothing without boxing.
you're absolutely right.
Bob Griffiths was a lovely unit. John Mason.
What a lovely man.
Guy.
And wasn't Johnny Johnson's second camera?
Yeah.
I used him as an underwater camera a couple of times.
He devised some underwater housing.
He did.
And built them at very great expense and would hire them out.
In actual fact, I hired them off him, and I hired him to work in a tanker piranha. And he thought I was joking. And it was only when we turned up at Amsterdam and there was a real tanker piranha and I got the waterproof housing for the camera that the penny dropped.
Yeah, but he's worked for BBC Sports.
Yeah, that's true.
Piranhas would be nothing compared to them.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Thank you for listening.